I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. Perversion is now the rule and order of the day. Let me just remind everybody, we're in the tribulation. Now, I know you don't like to hear that. We're in a time where God has prophesied that there will be a conclusion of all things of violence and death, and then he'll return. I know you got these Southern Baptists running around here with that, pre-tribulation false ideology, but we're in the tribulation. But anyway, so what's happening with all these drag queen shows? Why is this all of a sudden such an important phenomenon? Well, first of all, understand who's behind this is Barack Hussein, the long-legged Mac Daddy Obama. Someone told me that Obama was a pole dancer in Honolulu in his youth. He was 15, 16 years old. He danced on a pole with a leather strip. I don't know that to be true. He had on a leather suit, and he was pole dancing for old white men out there in Honolulu. I don't know that to be true. But what's with this drag? Why is it? And Obama's behind everywhere you look now, people want to dress up as something that they're not. First of all, they've definitely gone ahead and killed God's agenda of male and female. That's gone, at least in terms of American humanity. But down at one of the big places, they're down in Bob Jackson's from Tennessee. And I don't know what the story is with why they want to pick on Tennessee. By the way, Mr. Engineer, we're going to conclude this segment with Fire Al Sharpton, because I want to find out what's going on with Joe Scarborough. Now, why is Joe Scarborough promoting Al Sharpton? It's got to be something sexual, because most people on MSNBC don't like Al Sharpton, because he's not a reporter, he's an activist, can't read. I don't know if he has a high school diploma. And all these people on MSNBC, including Jonathan Capehart and others, Joy Reid, they've all been to college, they were all journalists. Al Sharpton is just a hustler, but he got a position on MSNBC. And Joe Scarborough is now kissing up to him like he's, Cinderella, and they want to take him out on a date. Joe Scarborough and Al Sharpton. So we're going to find out, maybe we have to wind up our tune again to Fire Al Sharpton. But I'm going to let you also listen to some of this, what's going on now with all this drag queen stuff. Mr. Engineer, roll that segment.
Every day I consider moving to a bluer state, to moving to somewhere that they have protections for people like me, somewhere where I don't have to fight insurance to get the health care that I need. Somewhere where I can walk down the street in relative safety. I'm terrified, but I can't leave because I know that I would never forgive myself.
It amounts to an act of extraordinary bravery. Members of an unjustly maligned community, persecuted simply for living their lives, for being who they are, staring right back into the void and saying, we're not going anywhere. We have a right to live here and to love anyone we want to, just like anybody else. It was part of an incredible conversation between our friend and colleague, NBC News' Antonia Hilton, and Story Van Ness. Story is the hostess of a drag show in Tennessee. Earlier this year, that state became the first in the nation to restrict such performances, and it likely won't be the last. Although a judge temporarily blocked that law in Tennessee, there are similar bills being considered in 17 other states. Like, there's nothing else to work on. But the threat to the trans community extends well beyond what is happening in state houses. Wall Street Journal is reporting this. Since the Capitol riot,
when Barack Hussein, the long-legged Mac Daddy Obama, was growing up in Indonesia, he spent 7 years in Jakarta. And his mother, Stanley Ann, married a very wealthy Indonesian called Sotoro. And they were living a good life. They had a big house, private house. And the mother would go out, Stanley Ann would go out to work, and Sotoro would go out to work. But the nanny that kept Obama, we're talking back in the 1960s or 70s, the nanny that kept Obama during the day, who Obama said made a mean plate of beans and rice, was a tranny. This is going back in the, what was it, 60s, 70s? Obama's person that kept them during the day as a babysitter was a tranny. Took him to school, brought him back from school, prepared his meal, put him to bed. So Obama spent the first, 9 years of his life with a tranny every day. Now this is accurate history of the life of the time that Obama was then called Barry Soetoro. That's what his name was. Now he later came back when Stanley Ann married the Soetoro man, and then they split. After Obama had been married for 9 years, they split, and Stanley Ann came back to Honolulu. He took up the name when he went to high school of Obama again. But, when your babysitter every day of your life, day and night, putting you to bed, fixing your meals, when your babysitter is a tranny and you are a young boy, would you think that would have some influence on your perspective of trannies or LGBTQ or homosexuality? I think it would. Wouldn't you agree? So if you want to know where all this tranny is coming from, it's coming from Jakarta. It's coming from Indonesia. It's coming from Obama. That's where it's coming from. But I have to tell you something that, Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump dressed up in drag also. Yeah. Rudy Giuliani and Donald John Tribulation Trump dressed up in drag. Giuliani put on a blonde wig, white gloves, tried to look like Marilyn Monroe. I think he dressed up as Marilyn Monroe. Rudolph Giuliani. That's right. So where's all this coming from? And look at this. So it ain't just, if Trump somehow, some Trump supporters think that somehow or another Trump is against queers and against drag. It ain't true. Look at how he's looking at Giuliani. Giuliani dressed up like Marilyn Monroe. I heard Trump dressed up like Jane Mansfield. Yeah. So what's happening to our nation is from both Obama and from Trump. But back when Obama was Barry Soetoro, I don't know if I'd let a tranny look over my child, cook my child's meals, take my child to school. But that's how Obama was raised. That's how he was raised. But that's what we see happening in America today. That's what's going on. And so I thought I would at least pull your coat to that.